Chapter 31 Crush. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Coulson looked at Nick Fury with great resentment. He used his left eye as an example every day to say that he could not trust people casually. But in the end, your left eye was actually scratched blind while playing with a cat. Could you go any further? Nick Fury ignored Coulson's resentful gaze, and he felt a little worried in his heart. It seemed that the top executives of S.H.I.E.L.D. had been deceived by him. Was this wave of social death? In the office, Natasha felt helpless. She said, "The one whose eyes were scratched by the cat failed. The Ghost Rider is unwilling to take action. Stay where you are." Nick Fury said with a cold face, he had a headache, should he go to the X-Men for help? At the same time, something changed on the side of the Blood God Lizard, but a group of vampires who were very close came over. While they shot at the superheroes, they shouted fanatically to the Blood God Lizard, "The Blood God is supreme. Welcome." The Blood God Lizard was overjoyed. At this moment, Witsa's eyes burst into purple light, and several vampires were directly turned into ashes by the ultraviolet rays. Cool. Iron Man shouted, "Do you want to add some special effects to the eyes, the red ones with lightning?" That the Blood God Lizard looked a little ugly. After a while, another group of vampires arrived. Just as Withers was about to take action, the Blood God Lizard opened its mouth and sucked hard, and the blood from the vampires flew out at the same time and fell into the Blood God Lizard's mouth. Everyone couldn't help but be stunned. Iron Man shouted in disbelief, "You actually swallowed up your entire clan? I am the Blood God, the god of all vampires. Isn't it natural for them to dedicate themselves to me?" That the Blood God Lizard laughed. With his high-speed movement, he would not be at a disadvantage even if he was surrounded by a group of superheroes. In fact, if the superheroes did not support each other in one-on-one, no one would be the opponent of the Blood God Lizard. "Tell those vampires that they will only be turned into food when they come here." Seeing the Blood God Lizards tonic one after another, Nick Fury shouted loudly that his idea was very good, but unfortunately, it was of no use because the vampires did not believe them at all. On one side is the enemy who killed them, and on the other side is the hybrid vampire leader. As long as there is nothing wrong with the vampire's head, he knows who to trust. Nick Fury could only ask the agents to try their best to intercept the vampires and prevent them from getting close. Unfortunately, it was still useless, because in addition to vampires, there were also lizard men who were summoned. Although there are not many lizard men, their strength is far superior to that of vampires. More importantly, they have no weaknesses and are not as fragile as vampires. The Blood God Lizard asked the lizard men to entangle the superheroes, while he flew towards another street. Howard and Iron Man saw this and hurriedly chased after them, while the others were blocked by the lizard men. Run! The news about the Blood God Lizard has spread. When pedestrians saw his appearance, they immediately fled in fear. The Blood God Lizard was about to swallow the blood. Howard launched a micro-missile at him. He snorted coldly and released a bloody light to hit the missile. Burst. Although Howard and Teslak are the top scientists, they are not suitable to be commanders. My God, they need a real tactical commander. Andrew shook his head and signed a contract with the fleeing citizens. Then, a large number of robots descended from the sky and transferred the contractors. "It's you again." The Blood God Lizard was furious, and 10 rays of blood roared out, preparing to pierce the robot and the contractor together. Howard and Iron Man tried their best to stop them, but they couldn't stop so much blood light. Fortunately, there were a lot of robots, and some robots took the initiative to face the blood light. The next second, they were bombarded by the blood light, fell apart. On the ground. It is worth mentioning that only the robot was damaged, and the souls inside were safe and returned to hell. The situation is getting a little out of control, and it seems it's time to end this disaster. Andrew snorted coldly and prepared to take action himself. Since he promised to protect the contractors, he would not let anything happen to them. He was not Mephisto. He would do what he said. At this time, seeing that the situation was not good, Susan couldn't help but said to Andrew, "Andrew, although you can't take action easily, Iron Man and the others can't stop the monster. You are the only one who can save Manhattan now. You know, I'm willing to help you. Andrew took Susan's hand, stood up and whispered in her ear, but, you have to. Susan shyly hit Andrew, and Andrew laughed loudly. The floor-to-ceiling windows behind him suddenly opened to both sides, modified, paid for by S.H.I.E.L.D., and then he jumped down, under the building. The Harley motorcycle was already in place. Andrew landed on the motorcycle, and his body burned with blazing black fire. Then, he turned his neck, and a half-face mask of bones appeared on his face. Andrew didn't care if his identity was known, but it would be a lot less fun if everyone knew. Let's start. Andrew turned the handle, and the Harley motorcycle roared out with a huge roar. Natasha was overjoyed and hurriedly reported, "Fury, the Ghost Rider has set off." Very good. Nick Fury was also overjoyed. He said, "Iron Man, Barton, are ready to cooperate with Ghost Rider." Ghost Rider? You mean the Fire Rider? Iron Man was stunned for a moment, then cursed, "Coulson, you lied to me, you agents are really not worthy of trust." Coulson was a little embarrassed, and then glanced at Nick Fury. "Don't blame me, I was taught bad things." Soon, Andrew arrived at the battlefield with raging fire. Looking at the figure who was so cool that he had no friends, the superheroes present looked at him sideways. "It's an angel." The remaining humans and the audience in front of the TV cheered. The fire night arrived, and the disaster would end soon, just like last time. Tony, who was robbed of the limelight, complained, "Who has seen the angel of black flames? This looks like it is related to hell." Okay. The blood god lizard also noticed Andrew. He felt a huge threat from him, which made him frightened and angry. He was a god and he was the strongest. "Die to me." The blood god lizard used all its strength to speed up and split into 3 parts and rush towards Andrew from 3 different directions at the same time. Andrew stopped the motorcycle and stomped the ground hard with his big foot. Countless chains burning with fire rushed out from the earth and headed towards the 3 blood lizards. The divine lizard stalked away. The 2 phantoms disappeared immediately as soon as they came into contact with the chains. The blood god lizard was shocked and evaded as fast as lightning. Unfortunately, in Andrew's eyes, his speed was similar to that of a tortoise. In just 3 seconds, the blood god lizard's limbs were tied up by the chains. Hanging in the sky, the blood god lizard wanted to turn into blood and escape, but unexpectedly, the chain of fire contained Andrew's confinement magic power, and he could no longer turn into blood, and he couldn't even use other abilities. Andrew raised his hand, and the fire on his arm soared into the sky, turning into a flaming broadsword more than 10 meters long in the air. Then, the broadsword burned the sky and slashed down violently, splitting the blood god lizard diagonally. Chapter 32 Trial. You are listening at MTnovel.audio. The blood god lizard let out a shrill scream, and the wound could not heal at all, because there was a dark fire burning on his wound. Andrew took out a cigar and held it in his mouth. Then, he took out the cigar and blew out a smoke ring. The black flames on the blood god lizard's wound suddenly burned, completely wrapping the blood god lizard. "Wow, this one is too cool and powerful, right?" Spider-Man, who was dealing with the lizard man, couldn't help but shout. The blood god lizard, which so many of them couldn't take down, was actually easily defeated by the opponent. The other superheroes were also shocked. It was obvious that this was a big boss. Tony said unhappily, "Who is this guy? He can pretend better than me." The talkative Spider-Man asked, "Mr. Stark, when you say this, does it mean that you often pretend to be stupid?" Tony glanced at Spider-Man and said contemptuously, "Stay away from me, you will lower my style." Spider-Man took a look at the faded spider uniform with 2 patches on it, and continued to deal with the lizard man silently. He checked the clothes and found that the 2 were not on the same level. Seeing Spider-Man in such a state of desolation, Tony felt a little guilty. Of course, it was impossible to apologize. He, Tony Stark, never apologized. He decided to order some polymer clothes and give them to Spider-Man, a good friend of the people of New York. "Neighbors, things are not so miserable." At this time, the blood god lizards had escaped from the burning body and fled away. Andrew snorted coldly and controlled the chain to grab his head. Then, Andrew grabbed the blood god lizard's head and said, "Look into my eyes." The blood god lizard subconsciously looked at Andrew's eyes full of flames. In the next second, a lot of bad things he had done before came to his mind. It is worth mentioning that Dickon himself has no soul, but Dr. Lizard does, and the two merged together, causing Dickon to be implicated and judged by the eye of judgment. I have done so many wrong things. Before dying, Dr. Connors regained consciousness. He was filled with regret and chose to be freed. Dickon roared unwillingly, "I am not wrong. I am the Supreme God. Who dares to judge me?" No matter how loud Dickon shouted, it was useless. His sins turned into the fire of hell, burning his and Dr. Connors' consciousness into nothingness. Dickon is dead, Dr. Connors is dead. Andrew nodded with satisfaction and was about to take back his power. At this moment, a figure with a strong smell of blood appeared in the lizard's head. The figure roared, "How dare you ruin my business? Do you know who I am?" The person who came was Dracula, the ancestor of vampires. The blood god had deliberately set up this game. As a result, he was killed by others just at the beginning. This made him very angry and came in person to teach the other party a lesson. It doesn't matter who you are, what matters is, do you know who I am? Andrew sneered. At the same time, in Dracula's consciousness, Andrew's body swelled infinitely, like a giant standing tall on the sky. While Dracula was just a small ant at the foot of the giant, Dracula froze and cursed in his heart, "Devil, this is the demon. How could that bastard mess with a demon? Lord Demon King, I'm sorry to bother you, I'm leaving right now." Dracula didn't hesitate and eliminated this consciousness immediately. Andrew snorted, "You must be decisive enough, otherwise I will follow the consciousness and blow up your body." At the same time, the body of the blood god lizard was completely burned into nothingness by the hellfire. Andrew threw the lizard head to the blade and said, "It has the original blood of Dracula. You can see if you want it. Don't worry, his consciousness it has been completely erased by me." Dracula's original blood? Blade was overjoyed and immediately took the lizard head away. This thing could help him kill more vampires. Andrew looked around at everyone, without saying hello, and got on his Harley motorcycle to leave. He was going to take Susan for a ride and let her experience the feeling of riding the land and water. Looking at Andrew's leaving figure, everyone had different expressions, including awe, gratitude, and fear. Ghost Rider is stronger than imagined. If he suddenly does evil, who will deal with him? Nick Fury, a veteran paranoid victim, flashed his eyes and shouted to everyone, "Okay, Dickon Firth is dead. Let's work harder to get rid of the other lizards and vampires and end this damn night once and for all. It's time to end." Tony nodded. Just as he was about to take action, he noticed that the black suits and the robots were retreating. He couldn't help but ask, "Who are you? And why do you know about my father? When you are not so bad, I will tell you my identity. By the way, remember to go for a physical examination. You are almost 40 and don't even have a child. Howard is very angry down there." Howard shouted and disappeared into the distance together with the robots. "Whether I have a child is none of your business. Besides, I'm extremely normal." Tony's nose was almost crooked with anger, especially when others looked at him suspiciously. By the way, it seems that they had never heard of rumors that Tony had an illegitimate child. Could it be? Nick Fury shouted dissatisfied, "Do the right thing." Everyone shrugged and speeded up cleaning up the lizards and vampires. At this moment, a blue cloud suddenly bloomed in the sky, and then, the blue mist quickly enveloped the entire New York. As soon as they came into contact with the blue mist, the lizard men immediately fell to the ground in pain. Then, they shed their lizard bodies and gradually turned back into normal people. Apparently, that blue mist is the antidote. As they fight, Gwen recreates the antidote and uses a device to release it. Without the lizard people, the remaining vampires were not worth mentioning. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief. Tony said, "That little girl is nice, calm and decisive. I want to invite her to work in the Stark group." Withers said with disdain, be kind and don't harm other girls. Tony said angrily, what are you talking about? Am I that kind of person? That everyone said in unison, yes. Tony's nose was really angry this time, and he left angrily to deal with other vampires. Withers and Blade were also about to leave. At this time, Barton stepped forward and said, you too, S.H.I.E.L.D. would like to invite you to join our team. I have been fighting vampires for most of my life. Do you know why I am still alive today? Withers looked at Barton and cursed, because I never work with idiots. You S.H.I.E.L.D. are the idiots among idiots. Barton was a little embarrassed. He wanted to explain something, but Withers flew away with the blade in one arm. Nick Fury hesitated for a moment and did not let anyone track Withers and Blade. He shouted, clean out all the vampires in New York City before dawn. Yes, Director. The agents loudly agreed, and at this moment the death knell of vampires in North America was officially sounded. On the rooftop of the Osborne building, Gwen breathed a sigh of relief when she saw that the device successfully fired the antidote. At this moment, she felt something bit her neck. She tried to take a picture of it, but she couldn't take a picture of anything. Gwen didn't take it seriously. She just hoped that everything would calm down as soon as possible. After all, she was partly responsible for the lizard potion. Chapter 33 Investigation. You are listening at MTnovel.audio. A few hours later, on a hilltop outside New York City, Andrew covered the sleeping Susan with a quilt and looked up at the stars. There are more than 3,000 soul contracts, which is much more than last time. My strength has improved again. Hey, given the level of unluckiness in New York, within a few years, the souls of all citizens will belong to me. Andrew was in a good mood. In addition, when things were almost over, 2 new worlds merged into this world. The fusion of worlds is nothing. The question is the timing a bit too coincidental? Each time they merge after the incident. Is there any connection between them? The 4 worlds at the beginning were not like this. Hey, wait a minute, Ancient One said that the integration of the world started a year ago. Andrew frowned slightly when he thought of something. 1 year ago, it happened to be the time when he came to the hell of rebirth. In other words, the fusion of the world has something to do with me. Interesting, really interesting. After a noisy night, the next morning, all of New York was discussing what happened last night. The headlines in many newspapers and news were, vampires are real. There is one newspaper exception, and that is the Daily Bugle. Its headline is divided into 2 parts. On the left is a photo of Spider-Man being knocked away. The headline is, The Totally Unreliable Spider-Man. On the right is a photo of Ghost Rider smoking a cigar in flames, with the caption, Angels Descend to Save New York City. They are all superheroes, why is there such a big gap? Peter Parker looked at the 2 titles and couldn't help but complain. At this time, a press conference screen appeared on the giant screen above. The spokesperson said into the microphone, there are no vampires in the world. A few years ago, an evil doctor developed a virus. People infected with this virus will be afraid of sunlight, silver, and garlic, and will live on blood. The military will clean up virus patients across the United States, so please don't worry too much. In addition, when encountering virus patients, please pay attention to the following points. Is this serious nonsense? Peter complained, and the reporters were also very dissatisfied and asked questions one after another, but the spokesperson was indifferent, acting as if you believe it or not, but I believe it anyway. It doesn't matter how the official defines this matter. What matters is that the United States decided to completely clean up the vampires. Now, the vampires were wiped out and had to flee to other countries, or flee back to Europe. Although the process of this operation organized by S.H.I.E.L.D. was a mess, the goal was basically achieved. Americans will no longer be threatened by vampires in the future. The vampires' home base is Europa, Blade. Let's clean up the vampires in North America first, and then attack Europa. Withers, whose arm had been repaired, said, Boss will provide us with enough money and weapons. Cool Brother Daofeng adjusted his sunglasses and said, very good. With the support of Boss, we will be able to completely eradicate vampires. The master and disciple once again embark on a journey. and they will only stop when the vampires become extinct. Amid the hustle and bustle, more than a month passed. This morning, Natasha, the Black Widow who had returned to work at S.H.I.E.L.D., knocked on the door and entered Nick Fury's office. "Forewarned warning, don't mention my eyes or my blindfold, otherwise don't blame me for chasing people away." Nick Fury said with an unhappy look on his face that for the past month, his colleagues and his boss Pierce had been acting weird and sarcastic every day, making him tireless. "I have no interest in paying attention to your eyes." Natasha couldn't wait to ask, "Fury, did you find what I wanted you to check?" Hearing that it was serious business, Nick Fury became serious and said, "I don't know how Ghost Rider knew that the little girl was not dead. For more than a month, S.H.I.E.L.D. has been searching for Dreykov all over the world. But found nothing. I believe that Dreykov and his daughter have been killed by you, and what Ghost Rider said is not true." "No, what he said is true, I can feel it." Natasha said stubbornly, "They are hiding, even S.H.I.E.L.D. can't find them. Unless they are dead, there is no one that S.H.I.E.L.D. cannot discover." Nick Fury said proudly, "Natasha, I think you are too guilty. I suggest you take a vacation or talk to a psychiatrist." "Does a person like me feel too guilty?" Natasha smiled bitterly, shook her head and said, "I'm applying for 1 month's leave. I want to investigate this matter personally. I hope you can get all departments to cooperate with me." Nick Fury sighed and said, "Okay, but I hope you can return to normal in a month and turn back into the Black Widow with almost 100% mission completion rate. Your behavior over the past month was very unprofessional and you even assaulted a colleague." Natasha shrugged and said, "I'm not as professional as you. I fooled everyone in S.H.I.E.L.D. Nick Fury said angrily, "I told you not to mention this." Natasha shook her head, turned and left the headquarters. No matter what, she would find Dreykov and Antonia and completely end everything in the past. That evening, Andrew, who had made Natasha so restless for a month, took Gwen to a Manhattan park for a picnic. Seeing Gwen's frown, Andrew asked, "Gwen, what's wrong? Is the dinner I ordered not to your liking?" "Fortunately, there's nothing wrong with these dinners except some of them are so spicy that I want to cry." Gwen complained. She said, "I'm worried about my dad. Those people in the city hall keep putting the blame on him. He might be fired. Lizard men and vampires caused havoc in New York, causing huge damage and certain casualties. Someone must take the blame for this incident. S.H.I.E.L.D. is a spy agency affiliated with the United Nations and is not suitable to appear in public. Therefore, Director George, unfortunately, I became the target of taking the blame." Little things. Andrew smiled and said, "The main reason why Director George became the target of taking the blame is because there is no one behind him. In fact, even if this incident had not happened, his political life would not have been too long." Gwen said, "My father refuses to cling to the powerful." "Your father was a tough guy, but the people of New York didn't know that." Andrew said, "I will write an article to praise your father and build momentum for him and mobilize the masses to support him. I have already thought of the title. Do you want a tough guy director or a bureaucratic director?" Gwen asked, "Is this really okay?" "Of course. I checked your father's information. His resume is very impressive, but no one knows about it." Andrew said, "You can become the police chief without any background. How can you not have a great resume? Of course, just reporting is not enough. The Rebirth Group also needs to come forward to support Director George. America is a capital society, and capital can do everything. However, there is no need to tell Gwendo about this." Chapter 34 The Punisher. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. My dad is the best. Gwen was very proud. She thought of something and asked suspiciously, "What is your identity in the newspaper?" "You can report whatever you want to report. I'm a gold medal reporter. If the editor-in-chief doesn't agree, I'll fire him." Andrew smiled and used chopsticks to hold a spicy meatball to Gwen. Gwen, who felt better, subconsciously opened her mouth. The next second, she was coughing repeatedly from the spicy food. Andrew laughed, and Gwen hammered him a few times dissatisfied. "This guy knows how to bully others." After the laughter, Gwen remembered something and said happily, the Osborne group invited Dr. Otto to work in the group. Although he is best at physics, he is also quite accomplished in neurology. He was going to study artificial suns and mechanical tentacles connected to brain nerves, and he chose me to be his assistant. Hey, this position is super popular, and I didn't expect it to fall to me. Andrew couldn't help but glance at Gwen when he heard this. Girl, why are you so destined to be a villain? Dr. Otto is Dr. Octopus, the one who researched artificial suns and almost blew up New York. If he guessed correctly, Norman arranged for Gwen to be assigned to Otto as a way of selling him out. Because of Dr. Lizard's incident, the Osborne Group's share price plummeted, and Norman was now eager to raise investment to stabilize the market. Thanks to Andrew's efforts, the Rebirth Group has gradually become a giant, and its investment is very important. Gwen didn't notice Andrew's gaze. She hesitated and asked, Andrew, can you teach me Kung Fu? Why do you want to learn Kung Fu? Andrew's eyes flashed. After the last disaster, he discovered that Gwen had a power similar to Spider-Man. Fortunately, Andrew restrained his breath immediately, otherwise Gwen would have been scared away. Gwen said, I feel that New York is not very safe and I want to learn some skills to defend myself. Okay, I'll teach you some self-defense skills sometime. Andrew smiled and said that although he didn't know Kung Fu, with his devil-level melee ability, it was easy to teach Gwen. After solving 2 worries one after another, Gwen was very happy and concentrated on enjoying the dinner with Andrew. At this time, Andrew noticed a family having dinner nearby. The man had short hair, was strong and lean, and he could tell he had been a soldier. Andrew thought he looked familiar and couldn't help but take a few more glances. The man noticed Andrew's gaze and turned his head sharply to look at Andrew. His eyes were as sharp as an eagle. Anyone else would probably be frightened. Andrew was naturally not affected. He nodded towards the other party and looked away. The man was a little suspicious, but then he shook his head and turned his attention back to the pair of children playing. His face was full of happiness. It was obvious that he loved his children very much. At this moment, a woman escaped from the woods not far away and shouted in horror, Frank. Bang bang bang. Before the woman finished shouting, a group of men in black armed with long and short spears chased them out of the woods. Then, a burst of gunshots sounded like exploding beans. The woman screamed and fell forward, her back covered with blood. Ah! The surrounding citizens immediately fell down or hid behind obstacles. At first glance, they knew that they were old New Yorkers who had experienced many battles. Maria. Seeing his wife fall, the man's eyes immediately turned red. As a special soldier, he did not follow his instinct to avoid, but ran towards the pair of children. He wanted to protect them with his own body. Unfortunately, the man was not fast enough. Seeing the men in black raising their guns and preparing to shoot in this direction, the man couldn't help but despair. At this critical moment, the surroundings suddenly became extremely slow, as if they were being decelerated. The man was in shock when a voice sounded in his mind, I increased your thinking speed, but your body can't keep up with your thinking, so you still can't save them. In 1 second, they will die in front of you. The man hurriedly shouted with his consciousness, save them, help me save them, I will give everything. I can save them, and I can also save your wife who was shot, but from now on, your soul will belong to me, and you will become my general and work hard for me. Andrew said slowly, by the way, I am the Demon King of Hell, which means that if you agree, you will become the Punisher of Hell. Andrew has recognized this man. He is Frank Custer, the future Punisher, an anti-hero who fights violence with violence, killing a gang one man at a time. The Punisher is not only a powerful anti-hero, but also a top tactical commander, and Hell Reborn needs his talent. Frank agreed immediately without any hesitation, I agree. Your soul belongs to me. With these words, the surroundings suddenly returned to normal, and then, a figure appeared in front of Frank and a pair of children at an alarming speed. This figure was of course Andrew. He opened the umbrella and bullets hit the umbrella surface densely, but failed to penetrate. They all fell on the grass. Andrew. Gwen climbed up and wanted to hold Andrew's hand, but found that he had already arrived in front of Frank. She was shocked for a moment. Isn't this too fast? Also, where did your umbrella come from? I haven't seen it at all before, okay? Andrew didn't talk nonsense. He rushed into the group of men in black with an umbrella holding the bullet. Then he closed the umbrella, raised it and dropped it, bang bang bang. A minute later, more than 10 men in black all fell to the ground and covered themselves up. The arms wailed. All martial arts in the world are invincible, except speed. Andrew put the umbrella behind him and said like a martial arts master. Gwen kept clapping her hands excitedly. Her boyfriend was so handsome. When other people saw that the bad guy was defeated, they all stood up and applauded. He was so handsome just now that the shadow of the umbrella could not be seen clearly. Maria, you can't die, I will take you to the hospital right away. Frank rushed to his unconscious wife, picked her up and prepared to rush outside. Andrew smiled and said, "Don't worry, she won't die. I promised you." Hearing this familiar voice, Frank's body shook violently. Is this young man actually the devil who wanted his soul before? Let's go to the hospital first. Andrew said to Gwen, who was walking over, "Gwen, take your 2 children to the hospital with him. I'll wait for the police here." "Well, leave it to me, Andrew, you're so handsome." Gwen kissed Andrew on the cheek and went to comfort the 2 crying children. Frank took a deep look at Andrew and ran quickly towards the parking lot. An hour later, the doctor walked out of the operating room with a tired look on his face. Then, he took off his mask and said to the anxious Frank, "The patient has passed the critical period. I have to say that this is a miracle. The patient's vitality is very tenacious." Miracle. Frank knew very well that this was not a miracle, but the power of the devil. He said to the doctor, "Thank you, doctor." Chapter 35 Conditions. You are listening at MaleProtagonist. She will stay in the ICU for a while. You go and help her with the procedures. I hope you have enough medical insurance. The cost of subsequent treatment will be very expensive. The doctor nodded and led the nurses to transfer the patient. Frank looked at the leaving bed and couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. At this time, a voice sounded next to Frank, "Don't worry so much, I promised you, she won't die." Frank turned his head stiffly. He looked at Andrew, who suddenly appeared, and asked, "Are you really the devil?" Andrew smiled slightly and took Frank to the rebirth hell. Then he said, "This is my hell. Well, the air is a bit bad. Please forgive me. There is nothing we can do. It is a period of mass production and the factory has been producing robots." Hell, production robots? Frank looked confused. "I don't know much. Don't lie to me. How could there be a factory in hell, or a modern factory?" Andrew smiled and took Frank to visit the robot factory. Frank finally accepted the reality. He hesitated and said, "Devil, I am very grateful to you for saving my wife and children. They are everything to me, so I am willing to do it for you. Potency, however, I will not do anything that is unscrupulous or goes against the interests of the country. I am a soldier and I have my honor." Glory? Does America have glory? Andrew couldn't help laughing and asked, "Frank, do you know why you were shot?" Before Frank could answer, Andrew continued, "On the surface, it was your wife Maria who happened to break the deal between 2 gangs. In fact, someone was setting up a trap to silence them." Frank was stunned and asked hurriedly, "Kill? Who?" "Your boss in the Middle East used the corpses of dead soldiers to transport illegal drugs into the United States to make a fortune. The Cerberus operation you carried out in the Middle East was actually a silence operation." Andrew said, "If you silence others, others will silence you. It's very reasonable." "This is impossible," Frank yelled with red eyes, and his strong body even trembled a little because he was so excited, selling illegal drugs and transporting them with the bodies of dead soldiers. How could the army, which he regarded as sacred, do such an unscrupulous thing? In addition to being angry, Frank was still a little scared. If this was true, then what was his so-called glory? Andrew said, "Your good brother Billy knows about this. In fact, they want to silence you, and Billy also knows about it." Billy knows about this. Frank was hit hard again and even took 2 steps back in disbelief. That was his best brother. Frank stared at Andrew, like a volcano about to erupt, and said, I don't believe it. I want to investigate this matter myself. Andrew said, no problem, you can do whatever you want. If something happens, I will help you solve it. At this time, Howard on the side said, Soldier, selling illegal drugs is a tradition of the CIA. The CIA is definitely involved in this matter. Don't be careless. CIA? Frank was stunned and then said, I will find out everything. If it is true, no matter who he is, I will send him to hell. I'll give you a mask. It will help you hide your identity and help you withstand bullets. Andrew threw a bone mask to Frank and said, by the way, remember to bring some evidence back. The Daily Bugle is always short of headlines. The Daily Bugle? Is it your property? Frank was stunned. His wife had just told him in the morning that the Daily Bugle was the conscience of New York and was more reliable than other newspapers. Damn your conscience, that's the devil's property. That's right. Andrew waved his hand and Frank disappeared. Then, Andrew said to Howard, make a tailor-made suit for Frank. He will be the commander of the Peace Knights. No wonder you value him so much. Howard said, it's no problem to customize a suit for him, but we don't have all the materials on hand. There are iron ores in the rebirth hell, which can provide steel and some alloys, but some high-precision materials need to be transported from the earth. Andrew is not short of money, but the problem is that many materials require licenses and channels, and you can't buy them even if you have money. This is why the number of reborn hell battle robots is relatively small. Andrew smiled and said, don't worry, the materials will not be a problem soon, and I will also receive a lot of perfect customer service. Howard looked confused. Material? Customer service? This is irrelevant, okay? Andrew didn't say much. He said, during this period, you and Tesla should work harder. The next disaster will strike at any time. The next disaster will strike at any time. Howard was stunned. How many times has this happened? When did the Earth become so unsafe? It starts when your son becomes Iron Man, Andrew said. Howard. Late at night, Natasha was still checking the information sent by S.H.I.E.L.D. The past was haunting her like a demon, making her unable to sleep or eat well. She needed to use work to numb herself. There is no trace at all. How did Dreykov do it? S.H.I.E.L.D. is the largest intelligence organization in the world. Natasha frowned. At this moment, she suddenly appeared on a floating platform. Opposite her was a ball of golden flames. In the flames, a majestic figure loomed. Natasha didn't panic. She looked around and prepared to ask, but found herself speechless. Andrew said slowly, Natasha Romanoff, agree to the conditions in the contract, and I will tell you how to find Dreykov and Antonia. By the way, your former sister has been controlled by Dreykov and her life is worse than death. After saying that, a contract appeared in front of Natasha. The content of the contract was very simple. She kept this matter completely secret and did not notify S.H.I.E.L.D. She went to find Dreykov alone. If she violated it, her soul would be destroyed by the devil. Take away, why not ask for Natasha's soul? Because Natasha would never agree easily. More importantly, as long as she signed this contract, her soul would belong to Andrew sooner or later. Andrew was sure of this. Yelena is controlled by Dreykov. Natasha was shocked and read the contract in front of her carefully. When she finished reading, she looked confused. This contract was too simple. What did the devil want to do? Natasha pointed to her mouth, indicating that she wanted to speak. Don't sign. Goodbye then. Andrew raised his hand, and the illusion began to collapse from the outside. Natasha was a little anxious. She hesitated and pressed her hand on the contract. Anyway, the conditions of the contract were very loose. More importantly, she had to find Dreykov and end everything. Andrew nodded with satisfaction and said, go to your adoptive father, the Red Guard, and he will take you to your adoptive mother. Your adoptive mother knows where Dreykov is. Chapter 36 Imitation Master. You are listening at MaleProtagonist. As soon as Andrew finished speaking, the illusion completely collapsed. Natasha returned to reality with a confused look on her face. Was everything that just happened true? Why so fast? Not even a minute passed before or after. Although I don't know what this devil wants to do, his efficiency is really high. If S.H.I.E.L.D. had such high efficiency, the Earth would have been completely peaceful. Natasha complained that although the origin of the other party was unknown, his method was undoubtedly correct. The only thing to worry about was whether the other party had any conspiracy. Even if there is a conspiracy, I will go to Dreykov. I will kill him and rescue Antonia and Yelena. Moreover, S.H.I.E.L.D. will always stand behind me. Natasha made up her mind and went to Russia alone to rescue her adoptive parents. Her adoptive parents were spies and adopted her and Yelena in order to complete the mission. The Red Guard has been imprisoned for too many years and has become crazy. Fortunately, he still remembers the location of Natasha's adoptive mother Melina. Melina was already dissatisfied with Dreykov. She decided to join forces with Natasha to deal with Dreykov. The first step in their plan was for Melina to pretend to betray and let Dreykov send someone to take Natasha away. Shah and the Red Guard captured him. Then, everyone took a fighter plane back to Dreykov's lair. At this time, Natasha finally knew why no one found Dreykov. His lair was in the sky, a large sky fortress. What's wrong with people in this world? They don't even have a defensive shield, so they dare to build a fortress in the sky. Dreykov is like this, and S.H.I.E.L.D. is like this too. Andrew complained that he had been using magic to spy on Natasha, and Natasha lived up to his expectations and successfully found Dreykov's lair. In fact, if Andrew wanted to, he could also find Dreykov's lair with a little more effort, but he did not do so for the simple reason that he wanted to save his time for enjoyment. Is it because Gwen is not fragrant or Susan is not gentle? Why do you do it yourself when someone can do it for you? Harvest time. Andrew wasted no time and pulled the consciousness of all the Black Widows in the fortress except Natasha into the illusion. There were more than 200 in total. This is not the total number of Black Widows. There are a large number of Black Widows lurking around the world to obtain intelligence. Andrew floated in the air and said aloft, "Give your soul to me and serve me. I will help you get rid of Dreykov's control and give you the opportunity for revenge." This time the contract is much stricter than the contracts that Andrew used to use before. Once signed, the souls of the Black Widows will be completely controlled by Andrew. If he wants the Black Widows to live, the Black Widows will live. If he wants the Black Widows to die, they will live. The Black Widows are going to die. Although the conditions were harsh, all the girls, including Yelena and Taskmaster, did not hesitate and pressed their fingerprints immediately. They had been controlled by Dreykov with drugs, and their lives were worse than death. You will become my Black Widow, fight for me, and collect souls for me. Andrew nodded with satisfaction and said, "Don't worry, I've always been very kind to myself. After 1 year, I will help you recover and turn you back into a complete woman." Recover your body. All the girls' eyes lit up. Dreykov was a beast. In order to allow the Black Widows to complete their tasks better, he completely removed the reproductive systems of the Black Widows. In other words, all Black Widows were infertile. A complete woman. In addition, as long as you perform well, there will be other rewards. Andrew said, for example, eternal youth, extended lifespan, extraordinary power, etc. The girls' eyes grew brighter as they listened. A girl with black hair knelt down and shouted, "I am willing to serve you, Lord Demon King." What a flatterer. Yelena curled her lips, knelt down together, and shouted in unison with the other kneeling girls, "I am willing to serve you, Lord Demon King." Very good. Now, you take revenge first, and my magic power will help you release the control of the drug. Andrew laughed loudly. By the way, remember to get the master key from Dreykov. I want all the Black Widows except the crooked one. In the main control room, Dreykov looked at Natasha disguised as Melina and sneered, "Natasha, you are my most successful work, how could I not recognize you? Natasha tore off her mask and said through gritted teeth, Dreykov, your death has come. This time, I will not make the same mistake as last time. I'm standing in front of you right now, can you kill me? Dreykov motioned to the armored man on the side to stay still, and said with a smile, Taskmaster is his daughter Antonia. After she was injured by a bomb, Dreykov implanted a chip in her body and transformed her into a half-year-old. Cyborg Taskmaster. Taskmaster can imitate the movements of everyone from Hawkeye to Steve Rogers. Natasha tried to attack Dreykov, but she couldn't really hit her with her fist. Dreykov said proudly, all the Black Widows have been injected with pheromone locks by me. As long as they smell my scent, they can't attack me. Poor Natasha, you are in S.H.I.E.L.D. and I can't touch you. Now that you have thrown yourself into the trap, I will use you to secretly control S.H.I.E.L.D. This world will completely belong to me. Dreykov was very proud. At this moment, Natasha lowered her head suddenly and hit her nose hard on the table, making a loud bang. Then, Natasha, whose nose was bleeding, raised her head and said with a proud look on her face, you think I don't know about pheromones? Just as Natasha was mid-sentence, Taskmaster next to her suddenly punched Dreykov in the side of the face. Dreykov screamed and flew backwards, with two blood-stained teeth flying in the air. Before it was over, Taskmaster pulled out the long knife behind him and nailed Dreykov's arm to the deck with one knife. Dreykov let out a shrill scream and twitched on the ground. Father, thank you for taking care of me all the time. We will repay you well. Imitation Master said coldly. At the same time, there was a burst of screams and gunshots outside, but it was the Black Widows who took action. Natasha was dumbfounded. What happened? Also, was my nose bumped in vain? Dreykov asked in shock. Antonia, why can you get rid of the control of drugs? Taskmaster said, because I had people helping me, I recovered from the moment Natasha came in. Then why did you wait until I broke my nose before taking action? Natasha was very dissatisfied. It would be very painful if she broke her nose, okay? Taskmaster glanced at Natasha and didn't answer. Are you familiar with her? Also, I did it on purpose, what's the problem? Natasha was a little embarrassed. She apologized, I'm sorry about what happened back then, but I had to do this. Only with you present can I confirm that it is the real Dreykov. Taskmaster ignored Natasha. She found the key from Dreykov and put it into the console. Then, her skilled control system made the Black Widow's battle smoother. When Dreykov controlled the system, Taskmaster was always by his side. With the talent of Taskmaster, it was not difficult at all to control the system. Chapter 37 Soul. You are listening at MaleProtagonist. Natasha glanced at the console and asked Taskmaster, why are you all suddenly awake? The Imitation Master still didn't answer, as if Natasha didn't exist. Natasha sighed and went to chat with Dreykov on the ground. She said, you are very depressed, and I am also very depressed. I feel that people have plotted. Dreykov whispered, take me away and I will give you whatever you want. All I want is for you to disappear forever. Natasha snorted, and upon seeing this, Dreykov begged for mercy from Taskmaster, but unfortunately, Taskmaster ignored him at all. The Black Widow Legion's fighting power was very strong. After a while, all the enemies in the fortress were eliminated. Then, the Black Widows escorted the Red Guard and Melina to the main control room. The Red Guard was injured and had obviously been taught a lesson by the Black Widows. Seeing Dreykov on the ground, all the Black Widows had a strong murderous aura in their eyes at the same time. Imitation Master said, the boss said to take him down below and start again. Then, each of us can kill him once. Once is not enough. Yelena said coldly, and the Black Widows nodded in unison. If there is evil in the world, Dreykov must be one of them. Take it down below. Are you? Natasha thought of something and asked in shock. It turned out that the target of the devil was not her, but the Black Widows. It's not important. What's important is that it's time for you to leave. Yelena said, remember to forget what happened here. Forget? That's not okay. Natasha said with a mysterious face. At this time, a Black Widow shouted, "Fighters are spotted around." The Black Widows were stunned and hurriedly looked at the screen and found 6 fighter planes approaching. These fighters had special technology that had not been discovered until now. This is SHIELD's Quinjet. Melina asked Natasha, "Did you bring someone here?" "I didn't bring anyone here, but Nick Fury, the director of S.H.I.E.L.D., is a super psychopath that no one believes in. If I suddenly come to Russia, he will definitely send someone to monitor me." Natasha smiled and said, "With their methods, it is normal to follow them here." At this time, Natasha was pulled into the illusion again, and Andrew asked with a sneer on his face, "Are you very proud now? Do you think you fooled me? I'm not kidding you. If you must think so, then there's nothing I can do about it." She said this, but Natasha was so proud that Andrew smiled and said, "You said you didn't violate it, so you didn't violate it. S.H.I.E.L.D. followed you to the Sky Fortress, Natasha Romanoff, you violated contract, from now on, your soul is mine." Along with Andrew's voice, the contract imprint in Natasha's soul turned into the Phoenix imprint, which meant that her soul officially belonged to Andrew. Natasha shouted in shock and anger, "I didn't break the contract, you can't take my soul away." Andrew asked calmly, "Do you still remember the last clause of the contract?" Natasha recalled it and asked in astonishment, "The last one, the final right of interpretation belongs to the Demon King?" "That's right, I have the right to explain. It's a fact that S.H.I.E.L.D. appears here. If I say you broke the promise, you broke the promise." Andrew sneered, "Who do you think you are? Playing tricks with the devil? Are you worthy?" Natasha was so angry that her whole body was shaking, and she shouted, "I don't accept it." "Do I need you to obey?" Andrew said, "Your soul already belongs to me. I not only control your life and death, but also everything about you. Natasha, think about what you should say next, it will determine your future destiny." Natasha felt like she had fallen into an ice cellar. She was silent for a moment, knelt down in front of Andrew, and said with great respect, "Master Demon King, please forgive my arrogance, everything about me belongs to you." Andrew walked up to Natasha, lifted her chin with his fingers, and said, "Your eyes tell me that there is still a fire of resistance burning in your heart." Natasha had a sudden thought, and just as she was about to explain, Andrew continued, "But I don't care, because I have no interest in you, and one day, you will cry and give everything to me." Then, the illusion disappeared, and Natasha breathed a sigh of relief. Only then did she realize that her back was covered in cold sweat. Fortunately, the devil is not interested in her, otherwise, she is finished. Her soul already belongs to the other party, and the other party can easily make her unable to live or die. I was a little overestimated. Natasha shook her head secretly, but she did not think that one day she would succumb to the devil. She, the Black Widow, had never succumbed. It is worth mentioning that Natasha, and the other Black Widows, cannot reveal any secrets unless Andrew agrees. After dealing with Natasha, Andrew waved gently at the 6 Quinjets. The 6 Quinjets began to decay at the same time. Soon, they turned into 6 rusty old aircraft. Immediately afterwards, the old plane collapsed in the air, and the 6 pilots hurriedly activated their escape devices and ejected from the cabin one after another. This is the curse of decay. It's time for you to go. Andrew's voice sounded in Natasha's mind. Natasha did not dare to neglect, and prepared to leave with the confused Red Guard and Melina. Thinking of something, Natasha shouted to Yelena, "Yelena, do you want to leave with us? I will come find you, but not now." Yelena shook her head. Natasha knew that their souls had all fallen into the hands of the devil. She sighed and left the Sky Fortress in a fighter plane. As soon as Natasha and the others left, a large amount of black gas emitted from the Sky Fortress. When the black gas disappeared, the entire fortress disappeared. Melina was a little frightened, and she couldn't help but ask, "Natasha, what exactly is going on? It's better that you don't know the truth." Natasha smiled bitterly. What happened to this world? First there were angels, and then there was the devil. Can you still have fun playing? Melina reminded, "I don't care about the truth, but S.H.I.E.L.D. definitely cares. Natasha, you have to be prepared. Natasha suddenly had a headache. This time, she was afraid that she would be censored by S.H.I.E.L.D. for a long time. She hoped that her salary would not be stopped. She had a lot of credit cards to pay off. The Sky Fortress was teleported to Rebirth Hell by Andrew, and Howard, Teslak, and Ethan came out to watch at the same time. The technology is good, but this thing is too easy to destroy and is of little use. Howard said. Teslak also said, "It's flashy, boss, can you dismantle it? There are a lot of materials we need on it. If you say this, Dreykov will cry." Andrew complained. He said, "You can't demolish it, you can transform it into an air base, which will make it much easier to rescue people in the future. As for the materials, you don't have to worry anymore. Dreykov has an intelligence network comparable to S.H.I.E.L.D. With this intelligence network in hand, buying materials couldn't be easier. Whether they are formal or informal, you can easily buy them." Chapter 38 Instructor. You are listening at MaleProtagonist. No wonder boss you said the materials are not a problem. Howard suddenly realized that he and Teslak were very happy. With enough materials, their research would definitely be able to reach a higher level. In fact, the fact that artificial intelligence and Leech factors have been stuck for so long has something to do with the lack of materials. Then, Andrew teleported to the main control room of the Sky Fortress. When the Black Widows saw him, they all saluted, "Lord Demon King." Looking at a group of beauties who were good at winning each other, Andrew was in a good mood. He said, "Call me boss. Antonia, has the Black Widows list been unlocked?" "Boss has been unlocked." Taskmaster pressed the button, and dense red dots appeared on the screen. They were all Black Widows, numbering in the thousands. In addition, there were tens of thousands of peripheral service personnel throughout the intelligence agency. Andrew released a projection and asked him to teleport to Earth to sign a contract with the Black Widows. At this time, Dreykov on the ground shouted, "I am willing to surrender to you and serve you." "My hell, no need for trash." Andrew sneered, pointed at Dreykov, and shouted, "I curse you in the name of the devil. You will never die until I agree to your death. Okay, now you can take revenge as much as you want." Andrew said to the Black Widows, "No matter how many times he dies, he will be resurrected until you are satisfied." "Thank you boss." The Black Widows all laughed together, a ferocious laugh, a cruel laugh, a vengeful laugh. "If you come out to hang out, you will always have to pay back." The next day, thousands of Black Widows gathered in front of the square of Rebirth Hell. Each one was so heroic and charming that even a prodigal like Howard could see them with eyes wide open. "It's not that I've never seen beauties before, it's that I've never seen so many top-notch beauties. Any Black Widow alone would be a mouth-watering existence. From now on, you will be the bodyguard of this Demon King. You have two tasks. One is to be a soldier to help me fight, and the other is to be a customer service person to help me sign a soul contract." Andrew said to the Black Widows, "Normally, you can act freely on the earth and live your own life, but you must participate in missions and training." A blonde beauty raised her head and raised her chest, shouting loudly, "Boss, I don't want to return to Earth. I want to stay with you forever and be sent by you." The Black Widows all cursed curse words starting with B in their hearts, and many people also shouted, "Boss, we are also willing to follow you." Of course, there are also those who don't want to stay in hell, for example, Yelena, who like her sister has ancestral short legs. Howard was so envious that he almost drooled at the side. There were so many beauties, asking for whatever they wanted. "This is not hell, this is heaven. Don't be anxious. After you die, you will always be with me. Enjoy your life on Earth, live your life to the fullest, and live a wonderful life." Andrew smiled. No matter how delicious the food is, there is no point in eating too much at once. "Take your time." Then, Andrew pointed at the cold Frank and said, "He is your regiment leader and your instructor. From now on, you will obey his orders." The Black Widows all looked at Frank, their faces full of dissatisfaction. When it comes to fighting, the Black Widows never think that they are inferior to others. Frank laughed ferociously. He liked repairing thorns the most, especially since he was in a bad mood recently. As a man, there are always a few days every month when he is particularly grumpy. Don't underestimate your instructor. A few days ago, he just single-handedly killed the CIA director who was protected by a group of agents. Now he is one of the top 10 most wanted criminals in the United States. Andrew said that CIA Director William Rawlins was the mastermind behind the trafficking of illegal drugs. Frank did not tolerate him at all. He rushed into the safe house with a rocket launcher and a machine gun and killed him. It was said that even senior agents were shocked by the bloody scene. Vomited, the Black Widows were a little surprised that they could actually kill the CIA director. No wonder boss made him the leader. Frank didn't act very proud. In fact, he didn't think there was anything to be proud of. Compared with before, he was obviously more ruthless. He only lived for his family now. As for glory, let it go to hell. Go ahead. Frank, make a training plan. Andrew said, after training, I will send you back to Earth. Yes, boss. Frank nodded and stepped forward to lecture. The boss said that you are the best agents and soldiers, but in my opinion, you are nothing but beautiful and good at seducing men. Andrew was speechless. Frank's taunting skills were absolutely full, and the Black Widows were almost going crazy. With this bodyguard, it will be much easier to rescue people or sign contracts in the future. Andrew is very satisfied, reborn in hell, and is growing rapidly. At this time, Andrew thought of something and used magic power to contact Mtlnovel, who was wearing a straight suit and looked like a successful man, respectfully asked, Boss, what are your orders? How is the investment company doing? Andrew asked. The 3 demons have been buying souls with money during this time, and the gains have been good. However, other demon believers are also doing this kind of thing, and the competition is very high. This is why Mtlnovel and the others have no time to come to New York to save people. Mtlnovel said, the situation is not bad. We are strong enough and occupy 3 cities. Just 3 cities? I want them all. Andrew was a little dissatisfied and said, I will send some people to help you fight, and you will expand your territory as soon as possible. Andrew is going to send the Black Widows to help. On the one hand, they will be idle when they are idle. On the other hand, this will allow them to become as familiar as possible with fighting demons. Demon believers can use part of the demon's power, and some are even half powerful. Magic, sooner or later, Andrew will face other hells. He is not willing to be just a hell lord. He wants to become the Lord of Hell, the legendary Satan. Yes, boss. Hearing Andrew's dissatisfaction, Mtlnovel, who had been somewhat complacent before, said with fear, I will expand my territory immediately. Very well, Mtlnovel, don't be too obsessed with enjoyment. You have to remember who gave you everything you have now. Andrew snorted coldly and waved his hand to interrupt the communication. Mtlnovel and the others had a miserable life before, but now that the conditions have improved, they have lost their enterprising spirit and are addicted to enjoyment. They must work hard. He, the Demon King, worked so hard to collect souls, how could his subordinates slack off? After the training of the Black Widows was completed, Andrew waved them back to Earth to start a new life. However, Antonia, the master of imitation, stayed behind. She was half human and half machine and did not want to return to Earth and receive strange looks. Andrew did not force it, and arranged for Taskmaster to live in the rebirth hell. It is worth mentioning that Howard, Teslac, and Ethan were all very interested in her, interested in the mechanical parts of her body. Chapter 39 Leech Factor. You are listening at MaleProtagonist. In the blink of an eye, 3 more days passed. At noon that day, Trask told Andrew a piece of great news: the Leech Factor was successfully replicated. The Leech Factor is a factor that can disable mutant abilities, and Andrew needs it to act as a medium for casting spells. Andrew was very satisfied. We can start harvesting the souls of mutants. In a dark alley in Hell's Kitchen, failed mutant John looked up at the sky, his young face full of numbness and despair. John awakened as a mutant when he was 18 years old, but this did not bring him any benefits, because he was the lowest level of Epsilon level mutant. he had a big head, but no superpowers. Worse still, frequent headaches. John asked the mutant savior Professor that it's a pity that even Professor the Home he kicked out. Perhaps death is a better option for me. John secretly sighed, and at this moment, his eyes suddenly blurred, and he suddenly appeared in a simple and clean office, with a very beautiful blonde woman sitting opposite him. "Hello, I am the messenger of the Demon King of Hell." Yelena smiled very kindly and said, "As long as you are willing to sign your soul after death to us in hell, we will help you return to normal and become an ordinary person." John was stunned for a moment when he heard this, and then asked with great excitement, "Can you help me change back to an ordinary person?" "It's not me, it's our Demon King." Yelena said, "As long as you sign the contract." John immediately said, I'll sign now." Yelena said, "I haven't finished speaking yet." John shouted hysterically, "Needless to say, sign it now." "Where is the contract?" "I will sign it right away. I want to become an ordinary person again. I want to become an ordinary person again." The smile on Yelena's face was a little stiff. "If the boss hadn't said not to hit customers, believe it or not, I would have beaten you so hard that your mother wouldn't even recognize you." "Sign it." Yelena feebly handed over the contract. Although it was successful, why did she not feel any sense of accomplishment? "Also, the knowledge I studied so hard in the past few days is completely useless." Yelena secretly sighed. "No wonder boss would find mutants. They are just as desperate as we were before." John signed the contract immediately without any hesitation, and then he couldn't wait to ask, "When can I become an ordinary person again?" "Right now. Final reminder, you will lose all memories here, but you will remember one sentence." Yelena said, "Mutants who want to become ordinary people can go to Times Square." After saying that, Yelena sent John away and began to receive the next guest. At the same time, other Black Widows, like Yelena, kept receiving mutants. In the alley, John's consciousness returned to normal. He thought of something and hurriedly touched his head. The next moment, he touched a normal head that had not become enlarged. More importantly, John's headache no longer hurts, which means that he has really returned to an ordinary person. John cried with joy. Although he didn't know why he recovered, the point was that he had recovered. "I want to go home, I want to go home." John stood up and shouted excitedly, "By the way, I'm going to call Rich and the others and tell them that if they want to become ordinary people, they can go to Times Square. My dream was to count money until my hands cramped, but now it's turned into putting curses until my hands cramp." In the chairman's office, Andrew twirled his wrist and complained with an unhappy expression. There were tens of thousands of Epsilon-level mutants in New York alone, and most of these people were willing to sell their souls to rebirth in hell. In just one day, Andrew gained tens of thousands of soul contracts, more than the previous two disasters. Black Widow, mutants, it's a world full of despair. Andrew shook his head. He had gained a lot of souls during this period, and his strength increased rapidly. He vaguely felt a hurdle. After crossing this hurdle, he and the reborn hell would undergo essential transformations. Of course, Andrew only sees the hurdles now, and there is still a long way to go before he actually reaches that level. Tens of thousands of mutants turned back into ordinary people. This incident naturally alarmed all the forces related to mutants, and they immediately launched an investigation. "I never expected that someone could turn mutants back into ordinary people." The kind-faced bald professor, Jean Grey, a red-haired and gentle Phoenix girl, glanced at Storm speechlessly. Her colleague was a bit too naive. "That's their choice and we should respect them." Professor Charles said gently, "What I'm worried about is it possible that someone is experimenting on us mutants? Also, once this method is mastered by our enemies, the consequences will be disastrous. It's probably not an experiment. I've checked the bodies of several mutants and there are no traces of experiments on them at all." Jean Grey said, "But their X genes have all returned to an unawakened state, and I can't analyze why." After a pause, Jean Grey continued, "In addition, I asked them and they didn't know why they turned back to ordinary people. I feel like they didn't lie. They did not lie. That memory in their minds was erased. Professor Charles said, they only remember one sentence: if mutants want to become ordinary people, they can go to Times Square. Times Square, that everyone was stunned. Why was it Times Square? That's a New York landmark, very eye-catching. Other forces also had this doubt. They didn't know that Andrew chose that place because it was close to the rebirth group, so he could pull people into the illusion while working. It looks like I'm going to spend a few days in Times Square. Professor Charles said that this matter was so important that he was going to investigate it personally. This must be a human conspiracy. They are experimenting on mutants and preparing to exterminate us mutants. Another mutant, bipolar, Magneto, who was getting stronger and stronger, shouted loudly, and those mutants are all self-degenerate traitors. They gave up their identity as gods and became mortals. The mutants such as Toad, Big Steel Tooth, Saber-Toothed Tiger, Mystique and others all nodded. In the eyes of the radical mutants, they were the gods of the new era. Ruewen, go to Times Square and keep an eye on it. You must find out who is behind this. Magneto took 2 steps back and forth and ordered, Toad, take Daganya to the Canadian border to help me catch a mutant. According to the intelligence I got, she can absorb the power of other mutants. Chapter 40 Times Square. You are listening at NovelFull.audio. Good. Toad nodded, and the disheveled Big Steel Tooth growled to express his understanding. There was something wrong with his IQ, he didn't know how to speak, he was like a beast. You two leave quietly without being discovered. Magneto warned that there are Professor X's undercover agents in the Brotherhood of Mutants, which is why they often do bad things to those X-Men. Clear. Toad took Daganya and turned around to leave. Unfortunately, although they were careful enough, Professor Charles's undercover agent discovered some clues. Their car had been tampered with, therefore, when Toad and Daganya were about to catch the little naughty boy, they were stopped by the X-Men who arrived. After a fierce battle, Toad and Daganya retreated, and Wolverine Logan and the little naughty boy were brought back by the X-Men. New York. Why does the painting style become like this? In the coffee shop next to Times Square, Andrew looked at the citizens in the square who kept taking photos and videos with the Epsilon-level mutants, and couldn't help but complain. Gwen, who was sitting opposite Andrew, said, "Isn't it because of your Daily Bugle report, that a few days ago?" Andrew's words caused Epsilon-level mutants to gather in Times Square. The management was dissatisfied with this and asked the police to drive away the mutants. If it were anything else, the mutants would definitely retreat. The problem is, this is their only chance to turn back into ordinary people, so no matter how the police drive them away, they would rather die than leave. Director George was greatly troubled by this. At this time, the Daily Bugle wrote in detail the reasons why mutants gathered in Times Square. As a result, Times Square became an internet celebrity check-in place. That's right, it's a place where internet celebrities check in, tourists, and citizens come here to find mutants to take photos and post on Twitter. When the management sees that tourists don't care, they no longer drive away mutants. Most mutants are resistant to this, because the tourists look at them like they would go to a zoo to see an animal exhibit. However, there were also mutants who silently held up signs, $5 for a photo, $10 for a video, and $20 for a special video. Internet tools like Quaisho, Twitter, and Facebook are gradually changing life. The Daily Bugle reports only the truth. Andrew said, "Okay, that's almost it. I'll take you back to the Osborn group. It's not very safe here." Gwen took a sip of coffee and asked in confusion, "Not too safe?" "No way, the police station specially sent a team to protect this place. There are too many forces around." Andrew pointed around and introduced to Gwen, "The red-haired woman over there is Dr. Jean Grey in the X-Men, and the bald wheelchair man next to her is the famous Professor X." "Famous?" Gwen blinked and said weakly, "I haven't heard of it. I've only heard of Magneto. He is the most wanted criminal in the United States and is said to have assassinated the president. Magneto and Professor X are mutant bipolar." Andrew gave a brief introduction and continued, "The one over there you know is Coulson from S.H.I.E.L.D. The ones on the left who are out of tune with the crowd are people from the military. Hey, Psylocke." At this time, Andrew noticed an Asian woman with purple hair and a good figure, and couldn't help but be startled. If he remembered correctly, the woman should be the mutant Psylocke. The problem is, the ages don't seem to match up. It seems that the Psylocks in this world are a little different from those in the movies, Professor. Hellfire Club hired me. The Black King and White Queen are also very concerned about mutants turning back into ordinary people. Psylocke, who is a mercenary and a model as a secondary job, said, but there are too many forces here, and they don't want to be noticed, so they hired me to come here to find out the information. Cheen asked in surprise, aren't you supposed to keep your employer's secret? Who can keep a secret in front of this bad old man? Ling Dai sneered and said, Professor, if you have an answer, remember to give me a copy, and I will split it 50-50 with you. Professor Charles laughed dumbly. He was about to speak when he suddenly looked to the right with a look of astonishment on his face. Why did they come out? Weren't they allowed to stay in the college? Professor Charles was talking about Wolverine, Logan and Rugrat. They also came to Times Square. The reason was very simple. Rugrat wanted to become an ordinary person, so the macho Wolverine took the risk to accompany her. Wolverine and others thought Magneto is targeting him. Logan, with his wild hair, looked at the expectant mutants opposite and asked the little naughty, do you really want to become an ordinary person? I never wanted to be a mutant. The little naughty guy replied very definitely, I just want to go back to my old life now. I don't want to touch others and they will turn into mummies. Logan shook his head and said, I respect your choice, but can you really become an ordinary person by staying here? If you can't stay for 1 day, you can stay for 2 days. If you can't stay for 2 days, you can stay for 3 days. In short, I must become an ordinary person. The little naughty guy said, it's a pity that my appearance is no different from ordinary people, otherwise I could make some extra money. The looks from those people made me sick, and to be honest, I wanted to punch them. Logan said with disgust. At this moment, the surrounding screens and the citizens' mobile phones were disturbed and a large number of fluctuations occurred. Then, 3 people walked towards this side menacingly, and everyone who blocked the way was pushed away by them. The leader of these 3 people was an old man wearing an ugly helmet and a reddish-brown cloak. As soon as Coulson saw him, his expression immediately changed. The person who came was the most wanted criminal in the United States, Magneto. Magneto is surrounded by Toad and big steel teeth. It is worth mentioning that the Brotherhood of Mutants is very powerful. It is completely different from the 2 or 3 big cats and kittens in the movie. The reason why Magneto only brought 2 people here this time, because 2 people are enough. A bunch of traitors and a bunch of disgusting humans. When Magneto saw the people who took the video, disgust flashed in his eyes. With a wave of his hand, those people's mobile phones flew up at the same time and hit their faces hard, causing screams. Professor Charles immediately led the X-Men to Wolverine and the Rugrats. At the same time, the police, agents, and soldiers surrounded Magneto and the 3 with their guns raised. Seeing that something was wrong, the people hurriedly left the place. However, many people did not leave. They stayed nearby without fear of death, preparing to watch the next conflict. There are few foreigners, not without reason. Psylocke had no intention of participating in the battle. She casually found a seat and sat down, right next to Andrew and Gwen's seats. Andrew asked Gwen, do you want to leave, or stay and watch the show?